You're dead. Not likely.
2025 was a weird year for collecting action figures, for me at least. On my end, I do legitimately think that I got better at it. I learned how to better prioritize the things I desired in a collection, which allowed me to create a more svelte and high-quality collection. Sure, it meant I bought less items, but that's a good thing, right? Spending less of my disposable income on things I don't necessarily want just to fill a gap. However, the year overall was pretty shitty. As a US American, I had to watch as the country I live in was run by incompetent bigots, hoping only to help the richest of the rich, screwing everyone else over. Hell, this even affected collecting. The Trump administration's bizarre obsession with cutting off the rest of the world led to incredibly incompetent tariff rate raises, especially on China and Vietnam, the two places where toys are generally produced. It didn't affect just prices, but it also just really screwed around with shipment dates for certain items too. Hell, there are some items that were supposed to release this year that I still don't have in my hands yet. Even still, the action figures I did get were a great escape for me this year. I'll be honest, I had some rough times mentally throughout the year. Things at times just got really overwhelming. I'm generally doing a lot better now, reconnecting with people and just generally understanding myself better, but even still, it was rough. But one of the general bright spots were the many great action figures that I got this year. As such, for the third year in a row, I want to count down the best of the best. But first, the rules, because every list needs rules, I guess. They're going to basically be the same as last year's. For an action figure to be eligible for this list, they have to have been experienced by me within this year. For traditional figures, that means they have to have been in my house by the end of the year, and for model kits, they have to have been fully built. That does mean that a figure can be from any year release-wise, but they just have to have been played with by me. Alongside this, only action figures count, no other toys, despite other toys taking up a considerable amount of my focus this year. This list is also, clearly, all based on my opinion, as if it could be based on anything else. However, with all the rules out of the way, why wait any longer for the list itself? So, let's count it down. Starting with number 15. From what I've noticed online, my number 15 is going to be quite the controversial pick. For many, this figure should have never existed, at least in the form that it came to us. This figure should have never shifted its price point in the way that it did. It should have been smaller, it should have been bigger, it should have been whatever. For me, though, as the literal last item I got this year, I decided to give it a look on its own terms. I'm so glad that I did. Number 15 on my list has to be my first Titan class figure, the Transformers Age of the Primes Star Optimus Prime. For one, this figure is quite large. Now that can be good or it can be bad. Figures can certainly be simply too big to be livable. The Marvel Legends Giant Man says hello. However, this barely stays within the threshold of enjoyability, and I'm sure glad it does. On my Prime's display, this thing is a damn centerpiece, standing proud as a grand effigy to Optimus Prime. Its sheer size certainly allows one to take in the grand design of Star Convoy. The many cool greebles that never go too far away from the cool 90s super robot design he was based on. It does carry those design cues well, especially that coolly aggressive torso plate and that wonderfully Studio Ox-esque head. This can be seen in the truck mode as well, keeping the general design up while making subtle improvements that help it to feel modern and filled out. Despite all this, the articulation isn't really hampered. Sure, given the size, I do think there would be room for more, like an ab crunch maybe, but I do think he moves quite well for something of his size, making those cool dynamic anime poses at least somewhat doable in this figure. Plus, he comes with a ton of extra stuff to really pad out the package without feeling arbitrary. He does have issues. Again, he could have used some more articulation. His size does belay some slightly iffy materials for its huge price, and he has some small QC issues, though none that would keep him off the list. However, this figure keeps the core of something that was just so nostalgic for me. It has the vibe of a fun, massive, childish playset, though with many of the modern engineering and articulation chops that I look for as an adult. It just hits as something that I don't often get to feel anymore, a childlike wonder of a big toy. And it's worth it for that, if anything. With that, though, I think we can move on ahead to number 14. Over the past few years, I have formed a rapidly growing backlog of Gundam plastic model kits, but I did manage to work through a bit of it this year. This mostly entailed me working through most of my Witch from Mercury kits. It's a show I love dearly, filled with some of the best high grades released in recent years. As such, I can't help but put the culmination of that line on this list. That's right, this entry goes to the high grade, The Witch from Mercury, Gundam Calibarn. For a model kit especially, it looks stunning. The white is nice and clean, a brilliant bright spot in a shelf of other mecha. However, it is primarily highlighted, design-wise, by the beautiful printed parts carrying that unique rainbow pattern of the Calibarn to this kit without any extra work on the builder's hand. It makes the damn thing just look brilliant and beautiful, just like the scene in the show. It all comes together great too. The Witch from Mercury's kits are all built around a wonderful polytap-free system, which helps the kit both feel great in building while also allowing it to have solid, stable posability. It has everything you need to get this mech into wonderfully dynamic poses. This is also aided by its wonderful accessories. The massive cannon this figure sports is a unique weapon that really plays into the witchy theme well, and helps the piece look unique on the shelf. Plus, it comes with a simple stand that allows you to immediately place this figure into magical flying poses, especially those that make it look like it's riding its broom, so to speak. All of this is packed into a wonderfully cheap price tag. It just forms as a culmination of one of my favorite toy lines of the past few years. In a way, it kind of represents all the kits from that line that I built this year, reflecting on my love of the series. However, this kit does stand out as one of the best of the past few years and fully deserves a purchase. However, something doesn't necessarily need to be some value master to be on this list, such as number 13. I had a bit of a mental breakdown in March. Just a lot of things were going down, and it was really getting to my head, and it was just a lot. So, I decided to pick up a new figure as a little pick-me-up that month. I looked through reviews to see which figures would do that I didn't already have, and I decided upon one. One that led me down a pit of madness that forced me to go through a franchise that is, at best, mid. But hey, at least there were some good toys in there. That's right, number 13 has to go to the SH Figuarts Izuku Midoriya, aka Deku. This is a figure based on his finale era look, and it does a fairly good job of capturing it. This look does give him a really cool scarf that's pretty damn well painted, and it moves decently well as well for something made of plastic. Plus, it adds a bit of interesting color breakup to the green jumpsuit that he usually wears. Plus, the armor on the arms and legs are sculpted quite well. They just have a really appealing shape to them that really breaks up the baggy look that most of the costume has. However, what really brings this figure together is his posability. His torso is just so flexible, and paired with the generally good SH Figuarts arm and leg articulation, it makes it so he can easily do all of the aerial poses that this character really needs to be able to do to recreate some of his finale era scenes. Plus, even where the limits are with his neck posability, it's still expressive enough with the scarf around his neck. If anything, for the $60 price tag, I do wish he had a few more accessories, with him mostly only having hands. Hands that do break the wrist pegs at times if you're not careful. However, the black whip accessory he comes with is really neat, beautifully painted, and this figure can be augmented with extra parts from the Plus Ultra accessory pack. So overall, this is just a really strong figure. It's certainly better than the Bakugo at least. Outside of just capturing the character well, it also simply acts as a really cool, really fun toy, a great piece of hand candy. It grabbed my attention and threw me into a franchise that I didn't have much prior interest in past middle school. Was it worth it? Not necessarily. Again, the manga has pretty pictures, but ultimately throws away any substance it may have for a stock standard ending. However, the figure is really good, and that at least was worth it. However, sometimes a figure like this can throw me into a good manga, such as number 12. You should read/watch Undead Unluck. While it starts slow, it overall becomes a bonkers-ass story with interesting twists, a cool power system, and a really endearing cast of characters that should just be experienced by everyone. I honestly find myself connecting better to the character relationships here than to what I've seen so far of Jujutsu Kaisen. Come at me! And of course, I got to hear from some figures. They were on sale, and I was able to collect the entire lineup of 2 figures. While the figure of male protagonist Andy was neat, it makes some weird decisions that ultimately stopped him from being on this list. However, the other figure in this line was a bit of a revelation, one of the best feminine figures I've ever been able to pick up. That's right, figure number 12 is the SH Figuarts Fuko Izumo. Her design at its front is fairly simple, a short-haired girl in some basic dress clothes and a beanie, but it does it all so well. The face print perfectly captures the series' art style. The logo on her chest is cleanly painted and everything just looks right out of the series. Plus, it could possibly work well as a generic civilian sculpt as well, if you so choose. A particular standout is her jacket, tied around her waist. It's sculpted great, but made flexible enough to not get in the way, something that SH Figuarts Zoros could learn a bit from. However, her standout aspect has to be her articulation. Where most SH Figuarts girls stick with a single-jointed limb system, she fills herself with double joints, which allow her the maximum range possible for a figure like this. However, even better than that is her torso articulation. Ball joints upon ball joints allow for an immense amount of flexibility that allows her to get into tons of cool poses, fitting for her later manga characterization. It's legitimately one of the best torso joints I've seen on any figure, especially on a feminine one. Her biggest flaw is her lack of accessories. Outside of the extra beanie, it's just spare hands and faces, when she really could have come with her gun as well. It's a little annoying, especially given her MSRP, but she does often go on sale, given the series isn't quite super popular. This is a figure that I imagine most people skipped, but like her source material, she is far better than she seems. Just an amazing figure on its own, paired even better with Andy. It's just a surprising highlight from this year that I had to mention on this list. However, sometimes highlights came from some of the most anticipated figures of the year, not just the obscure hits, such as number 11. The SH Figuarts One Piece line really hit its stride in 2025. Once they were free to do pre-timeskip designs, they really seemed to finally have the time and energy to just let their pieces bake in the oven. 2024's Luffy was certainly a highlight, as well as the recent Shanks, and I've heard great things about the upcoming Usopp, which I don't quite have my hands on yet. However, here, only one figure makes sense to put on this part of the list, one that acts as a proper redemption of some of the mistakes from earlier in the line. That's right, number 11 goes to the SH Figuarts Romance Dawn Roronoa Zoro. On his front, he is simply a figure of Zoro's most iconic design. However, it does a stellar job of depicting it, from pitch-perfect faces to a well-sculpted and painted shirt, from his simple yet great legs to his green sash. He just reflects this iconic design perfectly. Plus, all of his accessories, while the basic loadout, look just as good, sculpted and painted to the nines. His swords still shine, his blade still fits in his mouth, everything is just great. However, he primarily shines, like in the last entry, in his articulation. People whine about the knees, but they move perfectly fine, especially better than the last time they made a Zoro. However, his torso is where it really picks up the pace. The most mobile shoulders I have ever seen, paired with generally good ranges everywhere else, means he can do basically whatever sorts and poses he wants, no matter the number of swords he holds. Overall, while he probably isn't the best figure ever, he's just really solid. He fits in well with his fellow Straw Hats, or on his own. Plus, I'm sure posing him with the upcoming Mihawk will be a treat. Overall, though, he really feels like a sign that the SH Figuarts One Piece line will be able to be something even more exciting and premium than it was before. Next up, though, is another figure from another line that does a lot of the same for me. Filling in the spot for number 10. So if you've seen my unboxings recently, you'll notice that while there are a few Transformers on there are notably less figures from that line than in my earlier review days. Not for lack of enjoyment, Transformers Legacy is really good. It just got really scattered and overwhelming for me. Plus, with my focus shifting heavily to import figures, I didn't really have the space for that hyperfixation that much. That was until I picked up one figure on a whim that really reignited my obsession with the series. Of course, that entry had to be the infamous Studio Series 86 Commander Class Optimus Prime. To be frank, I wasn't that excited for it when it first came out. I already had a G1 Optimus I loved in the Earthrise version, and to my eye he didn't really fill out the price tag the way other Commanders did. But I am glad I went up against my better instincts. As many have noted, he looks perfect. A little wide maybe, with a bit of backpack kibble and a round head, sure. But he is just the spitting image of a G1 Optimus. The rectangular chest, the stark white legs, the blocky shins, the works. He just looks so incredibly clean and dynamic, it hurts. A lot of his price tag gets filled out by his accessories, which do feel like a premium way of recreating the original toy's play pattern. It's the best trailer I've ever gotten, made of a nice, sturdy plastic that comes with all the wonderful trailer components you would need. Roller, the anti-aircraft gun, all of that. He also has weapons that look the best they ever have, especially that iron blaster, beautifully done out of a gunmetal gray plastic. There's also a slate of entirely unique blast effects, not just for his robot mode, but for his vehicle mode as well. His engineering works super well as well, with a strong, complex transformation that isn't confusing to make a beautiful truck. It does fall into some folly with some awkward too tight tolerances, but they aren't too damning. Finally, the weakest point to me of this figure is his articulation. Sure, he has all the basics and some bits that go further, like his too tight butterfly joints and articulated hands, but damn it, I wish his elbows and knees had more range for this price, plus maybe some extra torso jointage than just a waist swivel. But still, those are some small complaints on an otherwise amazing figure. One that captures the pinnacle of this character that, even with my qualms with the figure, I'm unsure they'll ever be able to top. The biggest annoyance now is that since he's slightly scaled up, I'll have to rebuy all the big players in my collection to fit his scale. God damn it. However, still on his own, Optimus is a stunning piece that every collector should have at some point. Speaking of scale, though, number 9. I really hate how few Master Grade kits have been coming out recently. A perfect scale, a perfect feel, a perfect build experience. These kits are some of the best things Bandai puts out. However, new releases have been few and far between, forcing me to look elsewhere for my fix. Of course, sometimes Bandai will provide in a parallel way that is still able to scratch that itch for one of my favorite series. That's right, number 9 on this list has to go to the Full Mechanics 1/100 scale Gundam Ariel. This kit, for one, builds up fairly well. In a way, she is a slightly more complex, upscaled Jewish high grade, but those kits are damn good, and the extra space allows for some extra moving parts and inner frame bits. It makes the figure nice and dense while still being a tad cheaper to keep the price and development costs down. Plus, it still has great panel lining opportunities and wonderful part separation. The head looks perfect, and while I still think the high grade's printing is better, the painted gund tech throughout the figure still looks nice and shiny. Plus, she still poses like a champ, having all the requisite joints for a figure like this, moving just as far as they need to. Like, her elbows are only about average.
I stand corrected, actually. If you angle it right, she does have double-jointed elbows. I forgot about that. I just always had it angled like this for the sake of the shield.
However, her legs are able to move all the way, even with some shifting panels. Her shoulders are beautifully butterflied, and her torso moves way above average for a model kit, making her really expressive. She also comes with all the accessories one would need for this character. Her blaster, the blast effects, even her shield, which can do the full splitting gimmick, even if there is some kibble left over when you do that. Of course, it isn't a modern Master Grade. It could do more. However, it does feel that spiritual gap for this character. It has that hand feel, mostly. It has the articulation. It has the build experience, mostly. It overall makes this a near-perfect depiction of one of my favorite mobile suits in the whole franchise. It represents one of my favorite television series of all time, so I am really glad to have it on the shelf. At least for this depiction, it didn't take too long to come out. Unlike number 8. For the Transformers, 2025 was heavily focused on starting people's collections of the original 13 Primes, characters who, for the most part, were mostly stuck in Transformers lore, finally getting long-awaited Generations renditions. I was mostly late on the upkeep for this group, getting them in the last few months of the year. However, one of them stood out to me from the start. The only one in the first year I actually pre-ordered. That's right, number 8 has to go to the Age of the Primes leader class Megatronus, aka the Fallen. It ends up being a pretty ideal Fallen rendition, taking a lot from his Dreamwave depiction to great effect. He looks like a living furnace, a dark plinth, burning spots leaking through wherever it can. This can be added to with the flame accessories the set comes with, making his rage even greater, but given their material choice, they would damage the figure if left in the figure, which is annoying. He still looks good on his own though, still full of rage. Alongside that, he has tons of weapons, from his sword to his spear to his Requiem blaster. He's just packed with stuff for that leader price. Even still, he poses like a dream. A slightly loose shoulder doesn't dampen the fact that he has everything I would want. Butterfly joints, great elbows and knees, opening hands, and expressive neck joint. Everything you would want, you get here. It does make him feel like our leader class that really fills out the price point, especially for modern day. His transformation is fun, and his tank mode is pretty alright. It is an aggressive space tank that I like more than most, but it could use a bit more stability. Overall, though, this is a near-perfect rendition of one of my favorite Transformers designs. Way better than that Titanium release, at least. He looks great, poses great, transforms great, and overall feels like he goes above and beyond his price point. He's a standout antagonist that I will cherish dearly within my collection. However, for this list, he isn't the most dark, brooding character on it. That would have to be number 7. This list was honestly quite hard to put together, probably the hardest of these lists to put together over the past 3 years. There were just so many cool, good figures that it ultimately required me to make some painful cuts. The biggest victim of this was the SH Figuarts Spider-Verse line, a bunch of releases that barely scraped their way out of the list. Not to say they're bad, they're all high quality as usual, it's just that I didn't have room for them for both variety's sake as well as for the quality of everything else. However, one managed to scrape their way onto this list, and that one was honestly quite surprising. That's right, the number 7 spot is held by the SH Figuarts Spider-Man Noir set. Yeah, I thought it'd be Peter B too, but come on! This figure's cool design is perfectly depicted here. Nice subtle mixes of blacks and grays are able to properly mix to make this figure look nice and premium. Alongside this, he has a removable hat that allows for nice expressive posing of said hat on his head. However, aesthetically, the biggest step up here is his soft goods. While Peter B had some as well, the trench coat is so nicely done, full of intricate stitching and buttons. That, paired with bendy wire within it, makes it a posable yet beautiful piece of soft goods, some of the best I've ever seen. Plus, the main figure's posability is great as well. All of the Spider-Men have been great from Figuarts, but Noir stands as a standout of his larger size, moving with agility through the air, coat billowing out behind him without a care in the world. Hell, even the persistent but ignorable issue of his hip sculpting is more ignorable here thanks to the darker color scheme that he rocks. Hell, the soft goods don't limit things that much. He still moves like a dream with them on. Even his accessories are pretty good. I wish he had the Rubik's Cube, but he has all the other Spider-Man accessories he would need. However, the real standout here is Spider-Ham, a static figure that still has a ton of options for how he can be posed, for lack of a better term. Overall, this is a real standout for this line, one of the best depictions of this character, not just for the movie, but for the character as a whole. You can pretty easily make him a comics noir, or just fit him in with your movie stuff where he generally belongs. It just makes him a versatile, definitive depiction of this character. Of course, I did get other definitive depictions of characters throughout the year, such as number 6. I do still love Kamen Rider, even if I didn't get a ton of their figures this year. You know how it is, the general ebb and flow of the line for me in my collecting journey. Of course, a constant highlight every year I get them is the Cinco Choseiho line, redoing classic Rider characters to the highest quality possible. For the most part, this has meant covering the Heisei era pretty extensively. Very few gaps have been left uncovered in that collection at this point, though one was honestly quite strange. They hadn't been done in a while, and they were some of the only writers to make it out of Japan and into Western markets. And Bandai left that figure line undone in the Cinco Choseiho series. That was until this year. That's right. Number 6 is greedily taken by the SH Figuarts Cinco Choseiho Kamen Rider Ryuki. As per usual, it's a damn perfect recreation of the original suit. I love the figure's red undersuit. It is sculpted intricately to match the on-screen model, and made of a wonderful matte textured material that looks ripped straight off of the screen. Plus, the metallic parts are nicely done as well. I also have to specifically note the paint on the belt. It's so beautiful and intricate. He poses beautifully as well. Sure, he isn't quite as flexible in the torso as last year's figures, but everything else is up to snuff. His rubbery shoulder pads are able to perfectly get out of the way of his shoulders, allowing them to make cool action poses. His legs are flexible as ever, with the special highlight of his ankles, being realistic yet incredibly flexible. I love this new style of ankle that they came up with, and I hope that they keep it up in future releases. It's so good. His accessories are pretty good too, a set of cards that I'm too scared of losing to take out of their packaging that still look just like their in-show counterparts despite their minuscule size. His beautiful sword, which goes into the hands pretty well, plus there's the dragon head hand, beautifully painted in silver and cherry red paint. There could be more, maybe his shoulder pads, but I do appreciate that they split the dragon itself into a separate release, keeping this figure's price down. Hell, this one even includes optional light piping. I love these accessories so much, and I love this figure so much. Overall, this is a wonderful love letter to Kamen Rider Ryuki. Wonderful flexibility paired with great accessories and a show-accurate mold. This feels like the best the suit has ever looked. The only reason he's lower on this list are because it isn't quite as good as some of last year's figures in the Cinco Choseiho line. Even still, that's a very high bar to clear, and missing the bar still makes this one of the best figures of the year, something that not every figure can be, as proven by the honorable mentions. That's right, I'm throwing the honorable mentions here to keep some increased suspense for the top 5. To be fair, on any other day it is entirely possible that these figures made the list. Like, I was this close to making this list like a top 18 before I realized I didn't want to. Still, all of these figures do deserve a lot of praise, so without further ado, let's jam! My mental breakdown got me a few other Hero Aka figures, though I mainly want to note the 2 Revoltech figures that I got. Revoltech's Uraraka is quite good, with some ingenious decisions in the angles, but is a bit light on accessories and the articulation for the price that I paid for it. Their Azuka Midoriya is also quite good, influencing a bunch of decisions on the SHF and even being better in places, but is missing out on the aesthetics a bit for him to win out over that release. I also love the other 3 Spider-Verse figures I got, though special mention has to go to 2 of them. Figuarts' Peter B. Parker is still a great Peter Parker Spider-Man with a ton of cool accessories and great articulation, but it is hampered by his large size, making him barely compatible with other series. I do also really love the Miles G. Morales, an impressive feat of technology for something so thin. Feels a tad wobbly, sure, but he is still a cool figure for a character with like 5 minutes of screen time. For model kits, I did get around to the Figurized standards Solida Mercury and Mjorne Rembrandt. They're pretty good for kits and get bonus points for Yuri. I also got a ton more Chainsaw Man figures. Firstly, I'll note the SH Figuarts Raise Arc Chainsaw Man, which is about as good as the original with some slightly clunkier new parts and a heftier price tag, leaving him off the list. Then there's the Builder Chainsaw Man, a Bionicle-esque buildable figure that's doing the job better than LEGO is currently, so good job on you, Jazzwares. Transformers-wise, there are a few figures I'd like to note. There's the Deluxe Soulless Prime, an underrated Fembot mold that is really cool, even with a lackluster alternate mode. The Deluxe Cosmos is a really cute minibot with a clever transformation. Finally, I love the Orion Pax in the Fractured Friendship 2-pack, a really fun toy of one of my favorite designs, even if it is a tad lanky for my tastes. All of those are great, but I do want to give special focus to 2 things in particular. Firstly is the HasLab Omega Prime set. This set, especially Fire Convoy, is near perfect for me. It recreates the original play pattern wonderfully while still being a set of high-quality, well-articulated action figures. I would have loved to put this figure on this list, near the top even, maybe even number 1. However, it has a fatal flaw, a joint in its torso that's too wide that quickly cracks the figure's abdomen. It self-destructs itself, meaning I can't put it on the list at all. I do still love it though, but you should not buy it. Secondly, more positively, is the entire LEGO One Piece line. These aren't figures, so they aren't eligible for the list, but these feel like everything I've ever dreamed of a LEGO set being. Sets that adapt one of my favorite stories, not just in neat builds, but in innovative play features as well. Special note has to go to the Windmill Village Hut, which proves a scene recreation doesn't have to be expensive, and the Going Merry, legitimately one of my favorite LEGO sets of all time. I cannot wait for Wave 2 this summer. Speaking of, I can't wait for the rest of the list. So let's move on to number 5. This one might be cheating. You see, to me, the Age of the Prime's aerial bots were pretty good, but not list-worthy. The individual deluxes are pretty cool, solid releases, but aren't anything special as their transformations amount to just laying down with jets on their backs. Plus, the Silverbolt, on its own, really doesn't feel like it fills out the price point. Again, that's on its own. However, sometimes, a set of items can be more than the sum of their parts. Having a full team of figures can make their display even better. If you make them a combiner team, well, that makes them list contenders. Number 5 goes to the Age of the Prime's Superion. God, do I love this figure. For one, I didn't think the engineering of a combiner skeleton could be this good. Unlike others, it takes the time to make sure each bit of combiner kibble augments each limb individually before combining, keeping the soul of a combiner intact. Plus, it takes advantage of the skeleton to feel nice and solid too, unlike the floppy Combiner Wars combiners. Alongside that, he has beautiful sculpting. He is greeble to the nines, making him look like a properly massive robot. He has the benefit of being made of a fairly consistent color scheme, those striking whites and reds with some splashes of black and orange. Plus, he has that dynamic head sculpt, beautifully taken from the animation rather than the toy. The reason I'm noting the whole set rather than just Silverbolt, which does provide most of the skeleton, is due to what the other parts add, primarily the jets on the arms, which keep their detail and variety while bulking out the arms appropriately and giving him some wicked cool shoulder pads. Plus, the skeleton gives him some amazing articulation, joints I would never expect on a combiner just existing there, with some wonderfully tight ratchets that help the figure stay up perfectly fine despite his weight. He even has deep ankle tilts, are you kidding me? This figure can get into so many poses while still being a wonderfully large size and appropriately weighty. It just makes for a perfect piece of hand candy, but for 2 hands. Even still, the individual releases are barely tampered with. The only one that feels a bit that way is Silverbolt, mainly because it has to fill the price slot, but it doesn't quite feel worth. However, despite it all, this set of figures is still magnificent, convincing me of the worth of a Combiner Skeleton, where I once was quite skeptical. It being able to convince me of this, I think, is what got it this far on the list, and it leaves me quite excited for Bruticus next year. This year. Time's confusing. Speaking of time travel, number 4! At this point in this little series that we call the top 15 or whatever, it has kind of become obligatory that at least one slot is taken up by a Nintendo Figma figure. What can I say? They've been great so far. Sure, Samus is still the best, but that's still quite the high bar, so anything below it is still very likely to be good. Most of their modern efforts up to 2025 were focused on Metroid and Splatoon, with smatterings of Fire Emblem. But in 2025, they finally went back to one of Nintendo's most popular series. Of course, I only managed to get one of them this year, despite 3 of them releasing, so that one has to make the list. Number 4 goes to the Figma Link DX set from The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. A good game. Anyhow, this Link design is one of my favorites, and the sculpting and the painting does a great job of depicting the blue tunic he wears within it. I love how the markings are painted, paired with the wonderfully sculpted and painted leathers that go over it and the chainmail that goes under it. It has a nice intricate variety that really makes it feel premium. Plus, there are some nice extra details once we get to the Zonai arm, whether it be fully covered or the beautiful exposed version. Speaking of, the main standout of this figure, and this version specifically, is the accessories. He just has so much stuff, tons of shields, swords, Zonai tech, and even his paraglider. Usually I'd bemoan this, say it's bloating the price with tons of stuff that most people won't want. However, A, there is a version someone can buy with less stuff that is cheaper, and B, given the immense variety in the game's open world, it makes sense to pack him with a bunch of options. They are all immensely high quality, all with functional extra parts that ensure that the included stand still works no matter what. It's just expertly done. He is also articulated pretty damn well. There are limits, mainly from the stiffness of the plastic used for the hanging tunic parts, but past that, he has every joint one would want, allowing him to get into many expressive swordsman poses. And really, that one complaint is what's leaving it at number 4, because otherwise, this is one of the best figures on the market, bar none. He looks ripped straight out of the game, with its beautiful artwork. It conceptually represents him as a character super well also, and it just feels so well thought out from a design standpoint. And it's ultimately executed very well. If I were to get any Link for my collection, I'm glad it was this one. However, this wasn't the only figure really brought up by its accessories and concept. There's also number 3. I collect a variety of lines, mainly because I have a stupid number of hyperfixations, but it often feels like the same general things make their way to the top of my lists. There seems to always be a Nintendo, a big robot, whatever, mainly because so often some of the series that I also love, outside of those, don't get the love they deserve. One of these from this series made the list once or twice, but often very low down, and I hate it. This series is one of my favorite things on the planet, and I wish it got better figures. Thankfully, this year, it finally did, thanks to a no-holds-barred contest that allowed the figure to really go all out. The number 3 spot is held by the SH Figuarts One Piece Portuguese de Ace. Yeah, Luffy's big brother, the Fire Fist himself, got a magnificent treatment from SH Figuarts. His sculpt and paintwork is just perfect. His faces look as cool as I'd expect, looking perfectly like Ace from the series. His musculature is done perfectly, not broken up by too much of his articulation, plus Whitebeard's skull and crossbones is quite pretty printed on his back. His baggy pants look great, and all of his belts are picked out with tons of little painted details. Of course, his hat tops it off perfectly with the face goggles and the nice skull bangle. From there, he really shines with his articulation. He can do basically whatever you want him to. His torso is filled with joints, incredibly flexible, with proper dumbbell joint top and ab crunch bottom. His shoulders have so much flexibility, and his arms are so cool too. His legs are finely double jointed, able to bend into the rubbery shorts to perfectly create a wonderful bend. Finally, he has those Cinco de Sejo ankles. Let's go! Unfortunately, the joints connecting his legs to his pants are a little loose, but they still work all the same. Finally, though, are his accessories. They're perfect. A wonderful coat from the Alabasta arc, with its wonderfully printed soft, good materials. Plus, he comes with the usual suspects of hands and faces, all as expressive as usual. Finally, though, and most importantly, are his flame effect parts. They're just so pretty, the shapes licking all over his body as it shifts from red to yellow. He has both just normal flames sculpt that allow it to look like his body is becoming the flames, as his devil fruit would suggest, as well as his iconic fire fist, which just is perfectly sculpted and painted with a nice spiral around the fist. Overall, this set is quite perfect. A beautiful sculpt with great paintwork that's able to perfectly pose as one would want. Plus, they didn't skimp out on the accessories at all, finally making his price point feel worth it. It is quite good, a perfect figure of one of the best characters in the series. I'm so glad this seemed to do well, as SHF worked to make an entry for this year's contest as well, with the upcoming Marco, who just looks so pretty. But for now, this is the best One Piece figure in my collection, one I think anyone should try to pick up. Great articulation is often a sign for this list, really, because we can also see that on number 2. I'm mad! You see, I want to watch reviews of feminine action figures sometimes, and all I get are these freaks sexualizing these characters every single fucking time. I know I'm sounding like a Puritan here, and I really don't want to be. I'm fine with people being sexual beings if they so choose, that's fine. It's just in this context where it's every single time, it so often feels like this unhealthy objectification that has always left me feeling a bit uncomfortable. And it happens all the time. It especially sucks because sometimes these figures are really, really good, and it makes me feel embarrassed about owning them. Such is the case with my number 2 pick, the Revoltech My Hero Academia Mirko. And getting it out of the way, I get it. She's hot, she has that bunny motif, but is also really buff. Yeah. But outside of all of that, it's just a cool design that's really well depicted in figure form. The sculpt and paint on the leotard looks great, cleanly and perfectly capturing her costume that makes her look like the bombastic wrestler. Her long boots are also really well done, with the metallic rabbit foot soles. The musculature is some of the best to do it in any action figure. Really well defined, though a real standout is her faces, which perfectly capture her personality, whether it be happy, smug, or immensely angry. However, what really pushes her over the top is her articulation. Oh my goodness, she can get into action poses like a champ. Her shoulders are practically unimpeded, her legs are as flexible as possible, while still being quite well hidden with their joints, especially the thigh swivel being at the boot cut. Her torso is made up of a duo of joints that just work together stunningly. Her hair even gets out of the way perfectly with some Revoltech joints at their roots, which also allows it to swing in the air amazingly. It's stunning, I tell you. Plus, every joint is perfectly tolerant, buttery smooth in all the best ways. She's only really lacking in the accessories department, as I do really wish she could have come with her cyborg parts from later on in the series. However, despite being a high-end figure, this release really gets to the core of why I collect toys. It's just damn fun! The figure of course looks great, depicting a character I didn't think would get a figure in perfect detail, capturing its wrestler aesthetic wonderfully. But it also moves just perfectly, better than most figures that I own. It's simply the definition of hand candy, a perfect highlight of the year that I'd love to talk more about in a larger video. Maybe in a future review, let me know if you'd want to see that. However, even still, there is a figure that just beat out this one. So let's take a look at number 1. Aesthetically, usually, my collecting tastes tend to lean in the bombastic. Why get a generic soldier when I can get a cool robot soldier? Why get a guy when I can get a guy in cool battle armor? However, when it's fitting for a character, I will get a guy in a simple, plain uniform. And sometimes, that figure will be in one of my favorite lines based on one of my favorite series. A line which I thought was dead in 2024. A line whose frontrunner was almost in this spot 2 years ago, before being beat out right at the end of the year. But not this year. That's right, number 1 has to go to the SH Figuarts, Aki Hayakawa, from Chainsaw Man. I was so worried the trio wouldn't be finished, but he's here, and he's one of the best figures I've ever gotten. He looks perfect, his suit is nice and clean and straight-laced, as I would expect for Aki. His shoes are a nice pop of color, though still lining up with the usual blue color scheme that he holds. His hair looks ripped straight out of the manga and anime, in a great dark blue with the top knot poking out perfectly. Hell, his face prints are even good, something that this line is usually pretty bad at. Despite the limiting look of a suit like this, he still has stupendous articulation, full range in every joint, great butterflies that allow for wonderful sword and kon poses, double joints everywhere they're needed, wonderfully flexible rubber clothes that never get in the way. Finally, you top that off with a wonderfully flexible torso, and man, you've got a winner in my books. Plus, unlike other releases in this line, he has a full swath of accessories. Obviously, he has great hands and faces. His hands have the basics, but also come with some extras, especially that cone hand, the smoking hand and the gum hand for his compatriots. His faces have the usual stern looks, but there is that one goofy, disgusted face that feels quintessentially Aki when around Denji and power. However, he stands out in the bonus accessories that most figures don't usually get. He has both his swords. He could have just had one, but he has both the standard katana and the nail. Hell, the nail even fits perfectly in a sheath without part swaps. It's so wonderful and pretty and well engineered. Finally though, is his alternate hair, left dangling down. This is a look held in some of the most impactful scenes in the series, and once I saw this, I know whoever made this figure just gets Aki. Overall, this figure isn't just an action figure. It's a perfect adaptation of the character of Aki Hayakawa, able to pose for action poses while still looking clean and up to code. Great sculpt and paint that makes him stand out perfectly with the rest of the lineup of figures by being as straight-laced as he is. However, it's those accessories that really define his look, full of the most impactful references from the first season's events. This figure is just a love letter to one of the series' best characters. It takes a basic suited action figure and elevates it to a point of perfection. It's standard, but it's honest work, and it really does earn the #1 spot. And that's the list! Again, this one was really tough to make. Picking out who would even make the list was already hard, but looking for who would go where, who was better than the other, wow, what a challenge. Hell, a month from now, I may even change my feelings entirely and shift around the list mentally. But as of now, this is what my list looks like, so I hope you enjoyed it. I think it really proves that despite everything, 2025 was a pretty good year for action figures, making it a singular point of joy in a pretty shitty year for me, and I imagine for you. 2026 seems already off to a rough start, but I'm sure if we work together, hope, and stick with what we love, we can make it through. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to do all the usual YouTube stuff. Like the video so I know I should do more like it, leave a comment with your own thoughts, maybe even your own list. I would love to see what figures you like this year. And hey, if you want more videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more toy-based content. Until next time, stay safe, and I hope to see you around. Goodbye!